This might surprise you, but all of us at gameranx have been playing games our entire lives. You are totally shocked, I know. But when you play games for that long, certain things start to become instinctual. Like every game is built using knowledge of what came before. Like movies, there's certain visual language to video games. There's certain elements that always seem to recur, and certain things that if you've played games long enough, you just know what to do, even if the game doesn't explain it. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, 10 things that kick in our gamer instinct. Starting off at number 10, it's red things. Why? Well, they probably explode. There are few things more elemental than this in video games. If there is something that is red, if you shoot it, it explodes. Usually it'll blow up all the bad guys standing nearby, especially if they're far from you and normally hard to hit, or like if you're in the middle of a turret section. To anyone with gamer brain, they just know that if something's colored red, and especially if it's barrel shaped, then it will explode. It obviously doesn't even have to be a barrel. Sometimes it can be a pipe or a sphere or something else, but the key word here is red. I mean, obviously there are exceptions, like the classic Doom explosive barrel is gray, but here's the thing. It's not going to be red and not explode. If that happens, that is a deep, visceral disappointment. This is such a common thing that games that try to do something different actually run into problems. Like a developer diary from the Bulletstorm devs revealed that playtesters were confused when they ran into explosives that were not bright red, and they didn't even attempt to shoot them. The instinct to shoot things that are red is so strong that the existence of non-red explosive things melts most gamers' brains. And number 9 is Breakable Junk. Another classic. If there's junk around, you can smash it. And if you do smash it, there's probably some kind of reward inside. This kind of thing goes all the way back to Legend of Zelda, where tall grass was there specifically for cutting and would often drop some rupees. Breakable Junk's basically a staple of video games. You've got the boxes in Half-Life that stored health and ammo. You've got all the various pots and pans and piles of junk in any given Souls game that you can break for rewards. Hell, even in Batman Arkham Asylum, you get rewards for smashing stuff like Joker teeth. Developers know how satisfying smashing stuff in games is, so they encourage that kind of behavior by giving you some kind of reward. Usually it's nothing major, but who cares? It's fun as long as you get something it's worth doing. Whether you're slashing through grass or fat rolling through piles of debris, there's stuff laying around which most gamers instinctively know they've got to break for rewards. And number 8, when the game tells you to go left, you go right. Here's one that comes with just a little more experience. Anytime a game tells you to go a certain direction or gives you the golden path you're supposed to go on, but there are alternative routes to take, your brain is just gonna, go down the optional path. Now, sometimes it's a dead end, there's nothing there, but in most cases there's some kind of treasure or reward just waiting for the explorers out there. It's not really a whole lot of exploration, it's usually just a path directly to a treasure chest or something. But yeah, when a game tells you to go left, you go right. When you decide to go low, Michelle Obama goes high, I guess. It's not just for finding rewards, it's also key to discovering shortcuts that make exploring whatever location you're in a lot easier, and that's especially the case in Souls-style games, or the older among us will recognize that Metroidvanias are just full of this. There's a good reason so many people have this instinct. Fully exploring an area can make it significantly easier, and depending on the game you're playing, you may not be able to backtrack if you get far enough down the golden path, which bars your progress. Dead Space really comes to mind here. Really taking your time and looking down every single nook and cranny means you're going to end up with more ammo in a game where there's not a huge amount of ammo unless you only use the bolt cutter, and then that's not a problem. I think the fear of missing out is a big part of this one, though, and it's why it's become such an instinct to many of us. We've been burned so many times in the past, so even in games where there's no danger of getting locked out of backtracking, we still try to find every optional path there is before moving on. Backtracking also feels kind of bad sometimes, so that's what makes it an instinct. It's not rational, it's just something we do. And number 7 is part of the enemy glowing. Well, if it is, that's where to shoot. Games have come a very long way since the 8-bit days. Compare an NES game to an Xbox Series X one. It's really not even fair. It's like a black belt karate master taking on a 4-year-old. But one of the most common elements of a boss fight is the weak point. The spot on the boss where if you shoot it, you'll be able to do the most damage or perhaps even some bonus damage. Sometimes it's actually the only way to hurt them. For people inexperienced with gaming, when a giant boss shows up, what you're actually supposed to do might not be immediately obvious. That's part of the reason why the glowing thing happens, at least it attracts the eye towards that, but an experienced gamer already knows. That big glowing part, yeah, shoot that. There's a ton of variation on how this works exactly, but in practice, it's pretty much always the same. The boss has some sort of thing on them that's obviously weak, so you attack or shoot it. Sometimes it's their eye, sometimes it's an exhaust port or a cockpit, sometimes it's just a random glowy bit of flesh because they don't really know what to do, so they use that. Doesn't really matter, the function's always the same. Boss fights can be difficult and even stressful encounters because there's a lot going on. So developers try to make it as obvious as possible what you're supposed to do without just throwing up like tutorial messages that say shoot the eyeball. Not that that can't have any charm. Go back to Star Fox 64 if you really want some that. But generally it's better that they do this instead. Some people don't necessarily think this is the best option. Like a lot of longtime gamers are going to see this kind of telegraphing as maybe a little too obvious, but at least it works. And number 6, anytime you see a wall with paint or a bright color on it, that's probably where you're supposed to climb. This is kind of more of a modern contrivance, but you see it everywhere. I always associate this kind of thing with Mirror's Edge, but a ton of games do it, and after a while it just becomes second nature. If you're in the middle of a platforming section of a game, anything off color is where you go. Uncharted did it, the new Tomb Raider games did it, Far Cry, Horizon Zero Dawn, the list goes on. The colors are different for every game, but if something in the environment is a different color, like stands out, something bright, maybe neon, maybe something that you haven't seen anywhere else in the area you're in, that's where you're supposed to jump. Some games are a little more subtle about it, like using environmental lights to draw the player's attention to the direction they're supposed to go. Like if a location is dark and unlit, it's probably not the direction you're supposed to go. Or there's a hot pink neon arrow. They've done that too. Developers do all this type of stuff to draw the player's eye to a place subconsciously, and it really works. Play certain games, especially dark ones, and you'll know exactly where to go, basically by looking for the light, or the big neon pink arrow. At number 5, bushes and tall grass equals hiding spots. You play enough games with stealth mechanics, and you start to get a second sense for where the hiding places are. The game doesn't even need to tell you where they are at a certain point. You just know, hey, there's tall grass around. That means hiding in it is the thing I'm going to do. It's one of those things that only works because of gamer instincts, because rationally it does not make any sense at all. You'd obviously be able to tell that someone's hiding in tall grass, but it's a video game, so you might as well be invisible. It's not that you can hide in certain places that's a gamer's instinct. It's how they're spaced out and where they are. Usually hiding spots are fairly evenly spaced in a game. And like, let's say there's a stealth section, and then there's like usually a pretty logical path you can follow to let you through it without getting caught. There's other stealth things that gamers will instinctively recognize, like any lockers around will make perfect hiding spots, and big boxes or dumpsters, you can hide bodies there. Stealth games can become frustrating and confusing, so these kinds of recurring elements make sense. If you instinctively know what you should be doing, it makes it easier to follow the actual path and focus on the skills and puzzles of the game rather than decipher the mechanics. At number 4, when you see a crack in the wall or it's a different color or something like that, it doesn't matter if a game explains it or not. If you see a crack in the wall, you're going to throw a bomb or an explosive at it. This is a staple of not just adventure games, but pretty much every game. In Metroid, you're constantly throwing bombs at walls for secrets. Legend of Zelda is probably the most iconic with its cracked walls. You can bomb those to reveal passages. Or even Duke Nukem 3D, where any little crack in the wall can be blown open with a pipe bomb. Those are all old examples, but every single game does it. If a game is trying to be like Zelda, you just absolutely have to believe that there's going to be walls to bomb. Same with Metroid style games, and pretty much every FPS that has any exploration elements to it at all. It doesn't even have to be a crack, sometimes just a discoloration or a wall that's suspiciously door shaped. Like, play video games long enough, you just start bombing or smacking walls anytime you see any of this stuff. And when it comes to secret hunting, there's a lot of smaller things we go after instinctively after a while, but this is probably the most common. If a game has secrets of any kind, your game just tells you what to do. That's bomb things, punch walls, or generally just keep in mind that the game is hiding something from you. And number 3, anytime you get a new item or tool, something a little more specific, but if you're a non-gamer, it's something you might not immediately understand. If you've played a game like Zelda, or basically any adventure game with puzzle elements, you know that if you find an item in an area or a dungeon or wherever, you probably have to use it to solve puzzles in that area. There's no better example than this kind of thing than Zelda. Every time you find a new tool or weapon in a dungeon, that's the thing that you're going to be using next. The same goes for basically any open game with movement tools of any kind. Once you get them, you probably have to use them to continue. For gamers, it's about as obvious as it gets. Like most of you guys probably didn't even think about it, but for non-gamers, it's not quite as obvious. If you played a game with a non-gamer friend, you know how it feels. Like they're struggling with the easiest puzzles, but it's not their fault. They just don't have the gamer instinct burned into their brains yet. At number 2, when an NPC says something cryptic, that means it's probably a clue. In a game with like a heavy emphasis on a puzzle, you can pretty easily guess that if somebody tells you something, it's probably a clue. Play these kinds of games long enough and you start to recognize them without even thinking. You just know when to identify when somebody is talking nonsense versus when they're actually telling you what to do. It's a more advanced skill that applies to a lot fewer games, but it's an instinct that can make getting through more obscure and mysterious games a lot easier. Like Elden Game or Tunic, games with not a lot of obvious direction. Specifically with Elden Ring, I'm talking mostly about character quests. There's no quest log and no real indication what you're supposed to do next for a lot of these things, but what the characters say can tell you a lot about what you're supposed to do. Like when you ask the merchant about the howling in the woods near the start of the game, even though the solution is obscure, the guy basically tells you what you need to do to find the half-wolf man, even if it's couched in a lot of dialogue. A lot of RPGs like to hide hints in NPC dialogue. Basically, if some location is mentioned, especially if it's relevant to your current goal, it's probably something you gotta go to. A lot of games try to fool you with junk or totally useless stuff that's unrelated to the puzzle. Like La Mulana games especially love to overwhelm you just as much with useless information as the puzzle critical stuff. But if you've been playing games long enough, you just know what's the real deal and what doesn't matter. Unless it's the US version of Castlevania 2, then basically none of it matters because nothing makes any sense. And finally, at number 1, boss attacks that you're going to instantly recognize. Bosses are where gamer instincts really kick in. You're not just casually picking which fork in the road to go down. You're actually in a life or death battle, so the quick thinking is essential. Play enough games that contain boss fights, though, and you start to see patterns and repeated actions. After a while, you can guess what a boss is going to do before it even does it, just based on what bosses in other games have done, and most of the time your instincts are probably right. You don't even have to be in a fight for your gamer instincts to start kicking in. Anytime a hallway opens up to a big open area, you just know, oh, better stop and prepare if that's a boss fight. When you actually start the fight, there's so many boss moves you can probably anticipate. They swing their weapon up, it's going to be a vertical attack that you dodge to the left or right. You swing to the sides, probably a horizontal attack, you want to dodge backward or forward. If they start charging up, you just know that you're going to need to run away because there's a big explosion on its way. Or if they jump in the air, that means they're probably going to try to hit you with some kind of homing attack, or perhaps a butt stomp. Will you need to dodge the shockwave? Quite possibly. Like, that's even just more complex bosses. There's even more obvious ones. Like any boss that charges at you. Anyone who's gamed long enough knows exactly what to do with these guys. Just dodge. They don't hit you, they end up hitting the wall. They're dazed, you hit them, rinse and repeat. Fighting a boss, probably more than anything on this list, really does rely on your instincts because you have to react fast to whatever the boss throws at you. And if you've played enough games, you've probably already got a good idea what to expect, most of the time at least. And that's all for today. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable all notifications, and as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at FalconTheHero, and we'll see you next time right here on gameranx.